Hey, good morning, everybody. I'm Ryan.
I'm Grant.
And before we get into today's show, I just wanted to have a mini soapbox, if I may.
I like soapboxes.
So the whole point of what we're doing here at Propelio with the stage and with these videos is to not just self-aggrandizing, oh, look at us, but it's to give you actionable items that are outside the box, creative, and can really benefit your investing game. That said, I was at a situation last night where there was an expert person on a material, great person, great presentation, whatever, but the question was raised, in a wrap mortgage, how do I protect myself against a bankruptcy? And the answer that was given from said expert was, and again, I'm not trying to shade or shit on anyone, the answer given was, well, you're still protected against a bankruptcy because mortgages are protected assets and you'll still get paid. It may be 30, 60, 90 days, or 7 years, whatever, but you're gonna get paid. But the whole point, but in the back of my head, I'm thinking, didn't Grant talk about that on episode 1 of Grant Teach Me Something, which was 21 weeks ago? Mm-hmm. So Grant, what is the right answer? 30-second elevator, 1,000-foot view. What is the right answer to that question?
So with the bankruptcies, I mean, yes, there's restructures and all that kind of stuff, but one of the things that you can do to protect yourself is what we talked on episode 1, which was the 2 LLC system, where basically you buy into one LLC, sell to a separate LLC with a commercial transaction, then sell from that LLC to the owner occupant. If that owner occupant doesn't pay this LLC doesn't pay this LLC, and you get to foreclose with commercial law. Like the first month that doesn't happen, and in a foreclosure of a primary lien, it wipes out all subordinate liens, and that gets you your property back.
So literally, that little process is an actionable thing that you could put into your daily business. It is kind of an advanced mindset, but if you have the right team, the right people, the right mentors, the right lawyers, and everything to help you out, you can apply that to your business. And instead of waiting 30, 60, 90 days and just hoping that you get your money back, you can foreclose in how many days?
The first month.
The first month.
I mean,
you get your property back and keep going.
Now, we want to be very clear, like always, we're not lawyers. We're not giving you legal advice. This is something that you need to approach your lawyers about and discuss. Anytime you're going to put something like that into play, definitely talk with your lawyers about it. But
so the whole point is these videos give you actionable, creative alternatives to your business that will directly impact and help you succeed through using means like subtle plug, CreativeCashFlow.com.
CreativeCashFlow.com.
That being said, I meant to be 30 seconds, but it looks like it's 3-minute rant. But anyway, this is episode 21 of Grant Teach Me Something.
What's up, guys? Welcome. It's good to see you guys out here. I'm glad we've got so many people joining in right up front. This morning is going to be a cool topic because it's something that one of my students brought up during we do a weekly Q&A on every Monday, and they brought it up this last week, and I was like, that's a good topic because we're in a competitive market, and there's a lot of times where we're having sellers who want us to buy their house for full price, for that full retail sale price. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't make sense for cash buyers at all, right? I mean, if you're buying with your wholesale or your cash, what do you need?
To make a profit?
Yeah, you need to make a profit. Yeah.
Well, it depends who you're asking. If it was 6 years ago in Dallas-Fort Worth, it was like, hey, 65% minus repairs. Mm-hmm. Nowadays, you're lucky if you can find a 75% minus repairs.
Right.
Because buyers are out of control, going up to 80, 85%.
Totally. And I'm going to take a small derail on this too, because I see this get discouraging for a lot of people that are watching, conversations that I have. It's like, oh man, we're getting beat out. Oh my gosh, all these people, how are they making money in it? And the answer is most of the time they're not making money. Most of the time these guys that are coming in there and making these exorbitant offers that you might get beaten out from, I'm seeing them come back to me later and tell me the real situation about what happened, not them taking the picture of the check on Facebook saying, look at this check for $30,000 I got. But then but that's your gross.
Look at my credit card billed for $45,000.
I know. And then when you actually start looking at net numbers, people are losing money a lot in real estate making these offers. So don't be discouraged. If you get beat out by another offer, don't be super discouraged because you never know. That person probably lost money on it. As a short anecdote, I had that happen in my own neighborhood at my old house. There was a house that I wanted that was in that neighborhood. I made an offer on it. I got beat out by somebody. And so I had to watch it the whole time getting fixed up, becoming beautiful. I'm like, oh my gosh, how did these guys make, what did I miss? What did I miss on this deal? Well, Fast forward a couple of years, the person that bought that property was literally begging because, and this is going to sound, I don't accept everybody onto my personal mentoring, and this person was like begging me to take them onto their personal mentoring, and it turns out, and like they were like, I mean, this house that I bought a couple years ago, blah, 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 and told it was that person. They lost like $40,000 on that deal.
How many conversations are we having right now?
2.
Okay. I was like,
what I'm saying.
Where's Grant?
What I'm saying is that you're gonna get beat out by offers, and that's okay, right? If you're doing cash offers, don't be discouraged by somebody else beating you, because that other person likely could be losing money on that deal, and you never know until you have that full conversation with that person later, which might not ever happen for you. Today's topic is going to be, okay, we get it. There's high offers coming in. How can we make money giving an offer to somebody at full retail price? And I'll tell you something right now, it's not through a cash offer. It's not coming in and doing something that you think you might be able to wholesale or hold through cash offer, because when you've got a lot of cash on the line, you have to protect that cash. At its core, that's what that discount is all about. That's what when we talk about, like you mentioned that several years ago it was 65 cents minus repairs. Then now you're looking at 75 cents. A lot of people are in that 80 to 82 range, some 85%.
Yeah, let me preface by saying I'm not getting many deals at 75.
But that's kind of where that market comes out to. So, but why do we need that discount? What's that discount for with our cash? Why do we get a discount on the properties?
The reason you have to, well, from a flipping standpoint, I'm doing it now, where you're having like multiple conversations. From a flipping standpoint, you have to have a built-in discount, because even if you buy at 25% minus repairs, 15% of that is going to title fees, to realtor fees, to finance fees, to miscellaneous costs, to staff commissions. So even if you built in the 75% minus repairs and you have 25% of gross profit, you're probably only going to make 10 to 12.5, 13% net.
Right.
Is that the right answer?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. And so we've got this net. Thank you for isn't it good having smart people on stage? We've got this net number here of that 10 to 15% range, which is kind of the typical what you're shooting for net. Now, before I get all the white knights jumping in here, oh, I make 25% on my deals and I make 30. Yes, of course, we're going to make more money on a lot of our deals. That's the point, right? But a lot of times we're ultimately, when you really look at your net numbers, you take out your holding costs, you take out your everything, your true net, not the check that somebody takes a picture of and posts on Facebook and makes you feel bad. The net numbers that come from backing out everything that it took to get that check, you're in that 10 to 15% range, which means that you really only have a cushion of things going wrong with that 10 to 15%. Okay, so our margin there, when we talk about getting those discounts with cash, it's because we have a lot of cash on the line. Let's say it's a $100,000 house. I like using that because it makes percentages easy and I'm not very smart. Let's say that we're buying a house at 75 cents on a cash deal, $100,000. So that means rehab and acquisition, we're in it for $75,000. Well, when we sell that house, normal Joe Schmo is going to walk away with about 90% of a retail sales price, right? Because what happens when you sell at retail? Who do you have to pay? You
6% realtors and throw out another 2% for closing costs, title fees, and then you could even throw in another 2% for incidentals and negotiations with the seller.
Right. So typically, with closing costs, everything involved, you're typically walking away, Joe Schmo, 90% of the retail sales price.
Right.
Okay. So if we are all in at 75%, that means that we've got $15,000 there to make money. Right. Now, when we're talking about that 10 to 15% margin, that's using the ARV number. Now, if you start looking at a hedge fund model, and this is why a lot of you guys are going to chime in and say, oh, I'm making, whatever, 30, 40, 50%, because $15,000 as a percentage of $75,000 is a much different number than $15,000 as a percentage of $100,000. So we get that, and we can talk about that on another day. But if you have $15,000 worth of problems occur, you still have room to make money on that deal. And $15,000 worth of problems is a good buffer for a deal of that size. That's why these percentages exist, because we're protecting our cash that's going on the line. There's $75,000 out there. We need to make sure that if something goes wrong, we're going to make $75,000 at least. Let's break ourselves even. Even if we don't lose money, we're breaking ourselves even. Okay. So when we start having to push these values and start talking about buying at higher percentages, that's when we can do it, but we're going to do it through some creative means. We're going to do it with seller financing, and that is the reason why we're able to buy at these higher percentages is now we're leveraging made up money. We're not leveraging actually taking $75,000 of cash out of one bank account and putting it into another. We're leveraging, hey, I'm going to take over on your payments for you and I'm going to pay you your equity in installments. So cash out of pocket after closing, we may only literally have $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 of actual cash out of pocket.
Time out. Only because I know you are a stickler for this.
Right.
Do you know what you just said that's wrong?
Take over payments?
Exactly.
Thank you for pointing that out. So I always tell you, when we're having this conversation between me and you, between investor and investor, I'm going to use the word take over payments a lot. And I'm glad that he brought that up because I never want you to say that to your seller. We're never going to go to a seller when we're talking about taking over their payments as subject to and say, hey, I can take over your payments, because the words take over payment has this like implication that they no longer have any kind of liability on the deal anymore.
You're assuming the loan.
That we're assuming the loan. We're not assuming the loan in a subject to transaction. And subject to is what I'm going to steer you guys towards for this type of offer, for that full priced offer, is we can come in and take over on their mortgage, or the word that I want you to use with your seller is I can continue to make your payments on your behalf. Okay, that's what I want you to say to your seller is we can continue to make your payments on your behalf, because we need them to understand that we're not removing their name from this mortgage. If you go back, like he mentioned, episode 1 was about the 2 LLC system. I think it's episode 3 or 4. Go. They've got a playlist on Propelio, the Propelio Facebook here at Propelio app. They've got a playlist for the Grant Teach Me Somethings, and you can go back and watch. I do episodes specifically on subject to, so you can learn about that. Today I'm going to be talking about how you employ that to buy houses at fuller price. So I'm not going to go so super detailed into the sub 2 side, but we are going to continue to pay their payments on their behalf. We want them to understand their name remains on that mortgage. We are just the ones actually paying the payment.
I apologize for that tangent, but hashtag
it's
keeping
important.
them honest.
It's keep it honest. We're being very important there.
Honest? I don't know. Anyway, sorry.
So if we're buying a house subject to, okay?
Making payments on their behalf.
Making payments on their behalf. Let's say it's a $100,000 house again, okay? And we need to buy that at a percentage that other investors can't buy it at. So we're competing with a wholesaler that's giving them an 80% offer or something silly.
And let me throw out, it's obvious why we need to buy it what other people can't buy it at, but we'll say it just because I'm slow. The reason is if you are a homeowner and investor Ryan is coming through and saying, hey, I'll give you $70, and then Grant investor is coming in and saying, hey, I'll give you $85. Who are you going to take? You're going to take the one that gives you more money.
Right.
I know that's completely like 2-year-old math. I just wanted to point it out.
No, it's good. It's good that we have both sides, or that we're fully on the same page here with these things. So we want to be able to out-compete. We want to be able to out-offer the people that are, in our market. So we're going to employ subject to do that. Now, for my first example, we're going to use the example of somebody they owe too much, right? Maybe they owe $85,000, or maybe they owe, let's say, $87,000 on a house that's worth $100,000. No cash buyer is going to be able to come in and buy that because there's not enough discount for it to really make sense for a cash move. Well, with subject to, that is something that you can make that offer on. That's one of the things that allows us, because when we're buying sub 2, let's say that they owe $87,000 and they're fully caught up on their mortgage. Well, we can literally have them sell us their house. We're going to take ownership of their house. We're going to leave the debt in their name. We're going to continue to make payments on their behalf. But cash out of pocket, we've spent our closing costs to get there. You're spending a couple grand to get to that position. Now, at that point in time, we have not risked a whole heck of a lot of anything at that point. We've got $2,000 on the table. That versus the money that we could make, and I'm going to give you a real quick overview of what that might mean. I'm going to use my 10B2 financial calculator, okay?
Talk sexy to me, baby.
Talk sexy. And we're going to say that it's an $87,000 mortgage at 4.25%, because that's very typical of what we're doing on loans. And let's say that they've only paid on that mortgage for 3 years, so they've got 27 years left on it. That would mean that their payment, the one that we're continuing to pay on their behalf, would be $451.84 every month. PI. We're not talking about taxes and insurance, just the banks, the principal and interest. That's what we would be paying. Now, if we then look at what we would do to make money on that deal, I would recommend turning around and selling it with owner financing. Now, the cool thing about acquiring with owner financing is that you can do anything you want on the disposition. You could rent it, you can flip it if you wanted, you can do anything you want. I'm going to just talk about one scenario today, which is buy with owner financing, sell with owner financing, okay? But just understand, it's two separate transactions. You can do anything you want on that disposition. Let's say that we sell it with owner financing for the $100,000 that it's worth. Well, we're going to take a $10,000 down payment because we get a 10% down payment from our buyers. So that's 10 grand right up front. I'm gonna knock off $3,000 of that because I'm gonna say that you need to pay a realtor 3% to bring you that buyer. Again, watch episode I think 4 or 5, whatever it is, we talk about sub 2, so you can learn more about that. But when all is said and done, we're netting about $7,000 on our sale. We have our buyer pay for all the closing costs and all that kind of stuff. So really we're only coming out of pocket for the realtor. So we netted 7 grand right up front. Well, that right there, if we paid 2 grand in closing costs up front, that right there pays us back, and we've netted, what, 5 at that point, right? Just from our down payment. But that's just the upfront money. The monthly money that we would be looking at, just to give you a real quick overlook, is if we sold it for $100,000 and then we took a 10% down payment. Again, I'm saying our net, including our acquisition and disposition cost, is about $5,000 up front. But our cash that we're getting in, we're going to be selling it. That's going to be a $90,000 mortgage to our buyer, 9.5%, 30 years. That's $756 a month. If we subtract out that what we're paying to the bank underneath, that's a $305 a month cash flow. So you're making 5 grand up front and $300 a month, and you only risked 2 grand to get there on this example.
And Grant goes into how you could take this model and apply it to literally, if you work your ass off, how you could retire by whatever year you want to do. I forgot what episode is it, but it's like retire when you want to and make stupid amount of money.
Yeah.
So Shia, if you could find that and then link it in, that'd be great. But because a lot of people will probably thinking, $300 cash flow, well, that doesn't sound like a lot. I can get a rental and get $1,200 cash flow.
Yeah, which is probably, first of all, false.
But I'm just saying, it's like people hear 300. Well,
right.
I'm assuming people hear $300 a month cash flow, and they're like, well, shit. I mean, you got to do 5 just to make, pay for gas and pay for food.
Well, and let's talk about that for a little bit too, because I will tell you from the experience, I talk to a lot of investors, okay? In this world, we're constantly talking to other investors. 99% of the investors that have rentals are making a gross of about $400 to $450 a month on their rental. Most rentals, you're about $400 to $450. Now, the inexperienced investor will then say, I cash flow $450 on my rental, which is absolutely false. Your gross income from that is $450, but if you have an air conditioning unit go out, that's 6 grand, you have no profits for a year. Shot, gone. And so now you have to restructure your total. You've got to, if you've had it for 2 years, now you've essentially made half of that in actual net income, and you just never know what's going to happen. Every make ready that you do, okay, it's only $3,000 or $4,000, but that might be 10 months of income that's being shot out on a make ready. Now, rentals are great. Again, like you talked about, go back to the episode about retiring when you want. It's one of the earlier episodes that we talked about that.
Thank you, Stashia.
Oh, Stashia put it up there for you. So there's a link about that of how you can do it. But what I'm talking about here with an owner finance deal is net cash flow of $305 a month. Raise your hand virtually, put a like button up. Well, that's how we're gonna raise our hand. Shoot a like button up if you have a mortgage on your property. Just be real. Shoot a like button up if you have a mortgage on your
Is it a like or is it angry? I don't know.
Yeah, or an angry. Yeah, put an emotion about how you feel on your mortgage.
I love my mortgage.
Now, once you've done that, if you've got a mortgage on your house, now I want you to put a heart button up there if you've ever called your mortgage company and told them that your toilet was leaking. Right? Or called your mortgage company and said that the back door broke and that they need to come out and fix it.
I just want to point out, as far as Facebook statistics go, we just told everybody to put angry emojis for something that everybody has, and then put the heart button for what nobody's gonna heart.
Right. That's how I roll.
Great marketing, Grant.
I'm good at this, dude. So all I'm getting at is that we're creating a mortgage for our end buyer, which means that we're not responsible for the repairs, the tenants' trash and toilets that occur at that point in time. That's one of the reasons why I like the wraparound, and that's one of the reasons I'm going to employ this in those lower equity deals like we're talking about. When we have to buy at a percentage, like in this case, it was 87% that we bought it at. We took over a mortgage at 87. We're in this pretend world where it didn't have any kind of repairs and it didn't have any kind of back payments. So we're in at 87 cents, more than any cash offer could be, but we then turned that into $5,000 net up front and $300 a month, okay? That's the power of what we've got going on here. So obviously we're talking rudimentary here. We're going to have variables in that. There's going to be people that have back payments. There's going to be people that, or there's going to be houses that have repairs needed, those kinds of things.
It's all about the wrapped donut.
It's all about that wrapped donut, son.
Hashtag wrapped donut.
So, so how we're going to go from there is I want to kind of point out a little bit more how this might matter to you when you're making your offers. Okay, so let's think about this. We talked about this already, but I want to see how much you guys were listening.
Yeah, because I'm kind of listening. It sounds like we've talked about the basics of everything that we got going on, why it'd be great to do retail pricing, but as far as how, I don't.
Right.
We haven't gotten there yet.
Sure.
Right?
Sure. And that's what I want to talk about now. Is I want to dive a little bit deeper into numbers to explain why these numbers make sense. Right? If I'm going to encourage you to go out and pay full retail, it's not like, hey, just do it because it's going to make you money, right? You need to know why. That's one of the things I always tell my students. I don't care what your answer is. You can tell me you want to do anything as long as you have a why behind it. You can say, hey, I'm going to buy this house that only has $45 of cash flow, and I'm going to say why, and you're going to be like, well, because it gives me cash flow. Wrong. But if you can say, well, because there's a ton of equity in it, and I know that that's basically a savings account that I can sell the note on later,
right.
Cool, go for it. You have a reason.
And another reason could be on that situation is like, well, my time effort on this is absolutely zero.
Right, exactly.
And all I have $45 that pays for a tank of gas a month.
Yeah.
But I do zero effort. Like, to me, that would be a good deal.
Totally. Yeah, if you just have it handed to you on a platter, okay.
And there's zero risk,
so you've just
zero
gotta,
nothing.
Right, you've
no
just got to
liability.
have a reason behind it. So what I'm encouraging guys to do, and what we'll talk about a little bit more here, is what is the reason why I'm saying, okay, yeah, cool, let's do it. Let's go at full price.
Retail price.
So here's how I want you to phrase it, and we're going to dive into a little bit of the negotiations as we talk about this why, because it's gonna meld with each other, interlock. When a Joe Schmo seller, this is what I want you guys to answer because we mentioned this earlier. When a Joe Schmo seller is selling their property on the retail market, what percentage of that sales price should they expect to walk away from the title table with?
All of it.
All of it.
That's not the right answer.
If Joe Schmo seller is selling, guys, I want you to answer this. If Joe Schmo seller is selling their property on the retail market, what percentage of that sales price should they anticipate walking away from the closing table with? I'm acting because we've got a delay here. It's like a 5-minute delay. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and assume that somebody out here has answered the correct answer, which is
175%, 90%.
90%. 90% of that sales price is going to be. So Marcus answered kind of right. 10% is the inverse of that. They're giving out 10%. They would be walking away with 90% of the sales price, right? It's kind of the inverse answer. So it's still technically correct. Cameron, good job, 90%. So they're walking away with 90%. So if you have a seller that approaches you and says, I want to sell my house for the amount of money it would sell for on the open retail market, your answer will be, cool, I can do that for you. But you're going to have to be willing to take your equity in installments to get that number. That's kind of the key phrase. Now, I don't want you to talk, when you're talking about getting a seller to sell to you with owner financing, we want to take away the words lending. We want to take away the words like seller financing. We're not necessarily saying you're going to finance or lend me your house. I'm going to pose that as, we can do that if you're willing to take your equity in installments. That's a really good way. It's taken me a long time to get that phrase together to where it works, right? It's kind of
the key word is installment.
Installments, that's the key word. That lets them understand they're not getting all their cash up front. Have y'all seen that circle? I'm sure everybody has that. It's like it's a Venn diagram still when it has 3, right? Where it says like cheap, fast, or quality, and choose 2. right? You can have cheap and fast, you can have cheap and quality, but it won't have. It's kind of how we are with this one. Like, I kind of pose that as a wants and needs. I can give you cash, I can give you full price, I can close fast.
I just thought of something. It's kind of like the lottery. Because say you win the lottery of $100 million, and let's just take taxes out of this equation, but you win a $100 million lottery, you don't get $100 million unless you want to take it in the 30-year whatever installments.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But if you do the cash lump sum, you get like a third,
absolutely,
or 50%, or whatever that number is.
Yeah.
I've never won the lottery. I apologize.
But that's a good, that's the whole analogy.
Point.
Yeah.
But I think that's something that people can latch on to.
Absolutely. And I might even encourage you to bring that into your sales pitch. That could be a good thing to give them as an example. Good job,
You're welcome.
So one of the, it goes to the wants and needs, right? Like, I can give you cash, I can give you full price, I can give you a fast closing. Choose to.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if you want cash and full price, well, it's going to take me forever because I'm going to have to find somebody that's going to buy it in a way that will make sense for me before I will close with you, right? If you want full price and a fast closing, well, I'm not going to give you any cash at all. We've got to be able to walk away from the table with $0 out of my back pocket because that's going to be what makes sense for me.
Yeah, because given enough time, like if side tangent, my neighbor wants $1 million for their home, which is a tear down home. They could probably get $500,000 today, but they want $1 million.
Yeah,
they'll get it if they wait 50 years.
Right.
But the whole point of that is, whatever you want, give enough time, you'll probably get it. But are you going to be alive in 100 years?
Right.
So
not going to happen.
Anyway, that's just a random, absurd way to look at it.
So we go back to our discussion with our seller, and we're saying, "Hey, I want full." They're saying, "I want full price for this," and you're going to say, "Okay, cool. Well, we can do that if you're willing to take your."
Installments.
Your equity installments. I love Thomas's. Imagine unironically paying 3% per realtor.
What does that even mean?
Because investors, we're never going to really. I mean, I say never. It's not going to be typical that we're paying 3% per side.
Yeah.
So he's just being an idiot. I say with love. I love Thomas. We're good friends. So anyway, going back to that, yes, I can do that if you're willing to take your equity installments. They're going to say, okay, cool, what does that mean? And we're going to start explaining to them how that goes. Now, there's going to be one of two, maybe three scenarios at that point in time. We can boil it down to either they will not have any equity, okay, so we're just buying sub-2. Purely, they're essentially giving us their house and that's it. Or they're going to have a little bit of equity in between what they owe and what they want. And we'll need to figure out how we're going to get them that dollar amount, okay? So maybe they want that 90% mark and they only owe 70%. Well, there's a 20% difference there that we're going to need to make up. And I'll go over that on the whiteboard here in just a second with you guys. So they say, I want full price. And we're going to say, okay, we can do that with equity installments. They're going to say, that's interesting. What does that mean? We're going to explain that. But what we need to have them understand is, okay, Mr. Seller, if you were to sell this property on the retail market, you would actually be paying 6% for your realtors, 3% for your side, 3% for their side. And then it would be expected for you to pay another 1 or 2% in closing costs, another 1 and 2% in concessions, that kind of thing. So really, most people are walking away with 90% of what they get at that. You're actually getting a check from the title company for 90% of whatever your total sales price was. That's the offer that I can give you. I can give you that 90% mark. So you're walking away with the same amount of money that you would be walking away with from a full-priced retail sale.
Right.
And I may even be able to offer you interest on that money. Because if they've got equity, we can give up interest on that. The cool thing is that allows us to really give them more than they would have made selling on retail. We can pay them more through time, through installments.
So maybe I'm skipping ahead, but going back to the scenario of 75% minus repairs. So 75% minus repairs, say it need 21 work, that's like a $50,000 rehab, I believe. Or $50,000 offer, because
if it needs $20,000, it would be $55,000.
Would it be $55,000?
75% minus repairs on a $100,000 house would be $75,000 minus 20, $55,000.
Yeah. Okay. Math. So, or 90% minus 20, which would be 70.
Right.
So whereas typical flipper investor holds, or they're buying at 55, or Grant comes in buying at 70.
Absolutely.
So that right there shows you the competition edge.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what we're getting at, because we're going to give them that 90%, but we do need to back out those repairs.
Oh, did I skip ahead? My bad.
Only to the next step. That was where we were going anyway. So that's you didn't skip ahead. You just beautifully transitioned us into the next step, because we're starting at that 90-cent number. But then we need to point out, in order to get that $100,000, you would need to put $20,000 worth of work into this. And this is one of the reasons why I love, if you watch like my negotiations talk, and we'll do more negotiations talks as time goes on, but one of my big negotiation points is when I'm looking at repairs in a house, do not be the person, and I think it was 2 weeks ago that we did negotiations, do not be the person that goes, wrong, 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 terrible, terrible, everything in your house is awful, I need to get this for 55. What you want to do is you want to point out all the things that are wrong with it, and say something along the lines of, don't worry, I get that stuff for cheap. It's all good. I do this stuff all the time, I get that for cheap. So when it comes down to offer time, back here, and we're talking about that 90% offer, hey, you would really only be walking away with the title check from $90,000, but in order to get the $100,000 sales price, it's going to take $20,000 to get there, and that's $20,000 with my prices. Now, if you spent the entire time touring their house talking about how cheap all of your prices are, it makes your pitch at this point in time all the more enticing to say, hey, that's $20,000 with my prices.
Right.
That's $20,000 with the guys that I send a lot of work to. If you were going to do this, it might cost $25,000, $30,000, $40,000. I'll tell you right now, hiring a GCs take about 35% of a profit margin on top of whatever the repairs are.
If they repair it.
If they repair it. So like my numbers are 20. If you were going to hire a GC to do that, now you're talking about adding another $6,000, $7,000 just for the GC to go over that for you. Okay. Actually, no, I'm sorry. I'd take that back. If it's $20,000, 20% of that. Yeah. Am I being an idiot?
Always?
20% is $4,000, $5,000. I don't know. I'm probably being an idiot.
Math.
Anyway, these are the kind of things that are the gold nuggets. This is where I expect to see the fire emojis, because that kind of negotiation, that's what gets to the yes here. Is so you're able to say things like, hey, that's with my numbers, that $20,000. Because how many of you, I'd like to see you give us a like or comment on here if you have run into the situation where you're telling them their numbers and they scoff at it and they say, dude, whatever, I could get this done for blankety blank. My cousin does repairs. We could get this. That's bull.
But why haven't they?
Give me a like or a comment if you've ever hit that. One response is, well, why haven't they? Why hasn't it happened already? And then another response is, don't let them get to the point where they're ever going to say that. That's why I started doing the I get this done for cheap model, is because when I start talking about how cheap everything is, and then I tell them the ultimate number, I don't get that response anymore. That doesn't happen to me. People don't tell me, well, I could get it done for cheap. They just believe that that's the number, because I've already on multiple things been like, don't worry about that. I get that done for cheap. It's not a big deal.
And only because he did it with his hand motions and he didn't say what he was doing, is he was mimicking the flashlight.
Yes.
So point out the flashlight on said problem. That's not a big problem.
I always have my flashlight. And several of I've seen people on here actually point out that this one's an EagleTac D25LC2. I wish I had a partnership with them so I could get commissions every time I sell one of these. But it's a great flashlight. It puts off more light than a 60 watt.
Wow, that's a lot of light.
Well, the reason is that you can still see, like you can tell what I'm pointing at here even if all the lights are on.
Yeah.
And so that way, even if all the lights are on, I still use the flashlight so that I can point at things that are wrong with the house and non-verbally show them that I see it. So let's get back in.
Yeah. Let's get to the topic, which is how to make money buying at full retail price.
And it's all related, I promise.
I know.
So we have a $100,000 house. They would walk away with 90, but
90%.
they have to spend 20 to get there. Okay. So our offer is going to be coming in at 70, just like you talked about earlier, which the competitive offer from a wholesaler would be 50.
55.
Or 55, yes, I'm sorry, which is a big difference.
Or a wholesaler would be 50.
Right. Which is a big difference. That's how we get this, right? Now, do they owe 70 or more is the question. That's when we need to figure out, that's when we need to figure out, are we giving them equity or are we just purely taking over on payments? Are we just purely doing a sub-2 purchase? Now, we don't have time for me to fully explain how to back into the deal and decide how much money you have to pay them for that equity versus the sub-2, all that kind of stuff. That is stuff that we go into in the Creative Cashflow Academy.
But we can simplify it.
But we can simplify it, and that's what we're going to go through here.
Woohoo, whiteboard!
So let's jump over to the whiteboard real quick.
Whiteboard! We need a theme song for the whiteboard. Whiteboard!
Okay, so let's take our simplest version of this, okay, what I'm going to assume here is that we have a seller that owes what we can offer. So in other words, they owe too much for a wholesaler to make an offer. And that's why that wholesaler failed at making this offer. That's why our offer is going to be more enticing to them. Understand that when I'm going into this, this means this is what our max offer is. Okay, so in this situation, when we said repairs were going to be $20,000, that our max offer would be $70,000 for them, that ultimately means that we have $70,000 to play with as our offer. If they owe 50, we can offer them 20 to take as their equity in installments. Okay, but again, in the interest of time, in the interest of simplicity, we're just going to go through the core of this answer, which is our $70,000 offer is going to beat that $50,000 or $55,000 offer that's going to come in from a cash buyer. We've got a $100,000 sales price retail. They would only walk away with 90. We're going to have to put in 20 to get there. Now, I used an example earlier using 87%, meaning that we bought a house at 87% of what it was worth. In this example, we are going to buy a house at 90% of what it's worth, right? Because ultimately our basis, all cash in, all everything that we're doing is at $90,000. Now, on this example, we're saying that there's a $20,000 repair budget that needs to be had. That is the one bit of complication that I'm allowing in this simplistic viewpoint here. Because I already, at the beginning of this episode, we talked about just the pure, hey, we're taking over it, they have no repairs, they have no nothing, look how much money you're going to make on it. On this example, we are saying, in order to get that money, we've got to put $20,000 of repairs into this property. That's where our challenge is going to arise with this one. So, last episode I guess would be 20, right? We talk about getting private money from people with IRA accounts, people that might have less than $50,000 or $60,000 or $70,000 in an IRA account, and how can that be useful for you as private money? Well, ding, 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 guess how this all ties together? Look right here, we've got a $20,000 need to make this deal work. This would be a perfect example of when you might use that private money from an IRA holder, somebody that has less than $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 in their account, to make this deal work for you. Because your offer to your seller is what? $70,000, right? We're pretending in the simplistic view that they owe $70,000, and that's why we're able to get the deal, is because they could not accept the 50 or 55.
Right.
But we're going to need to come up with 20 to make this work.
Right.
Okay? So let's look at what we can do there. This $70,000, if we look at really what typically we're seeing out there with the sub 2 deals, we're usually seeing that this is going to be at something like 4.25%, and it's going to have 27 years left. That's kind of a typical sub 2 purchase. 4.25%, they've paid off for 3 years, 4 years, something like that. Now, again, we're shooting this in 2018. Rates are going to change constantly. As rates change, our acquisitions will change. But I will tell you that over time, most of the time, most everybody that you're going to get is going to be under 6%. Because even the people that bought at somewhat of the height, that are willing and ready to sell subject to, the max that they've got their loan at is about 6%. So let's run some numbers real quick. Again, I'm going to pull out this 10B2. We're going to look at how that works. So if I was to look at this loan that we are going to be buying as subject to, that means that I've got to put in $70,000 as my principal, 4.25% as my interest. I'm going to do 27 times 12, which is 324. That's the number of months that we are paying. And that means that the payment to the bank on this guy, actually, can we write this over on that side because we're going to subtract out, would be $363.55. That is the payment to the bank for this loan. It's $363.55. Now, when we sell this house, we are assuming that we're going to sell this house for $100,000. That's what we're saying the market value is on it. And we're going to take a 10% down payment, and we're going to pay 3% of that to a realtor for bringing us in an owner-financed buyer. That's the situation we're going to run with, which means that we would net $7,000. Okay, again, I'm being simplistic. I'm not going to knock out other closing costs and stuff. When you sell your house, your buyer pays for the closing costs. So we're going to net, and let's do a sale item down here. Is black the best thing to use, or?
I'm doing the multicolors so it shows up better on the.
Oh, is it showing better? Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Well, let's say that we're going to sell for $100K. We're going to take a 10% down payment, and then we're going to sell it at 9.5% for 360 months or 30 years. The payment on that, because our loan is actually going to be 90, right? We took our down payment on that. Our loan is going to be 90. The payment on that is going to be like, I think, $756. But let me just run that. So it's $90,000 at 9.5%, 360 months, $756.77.
What was that again?
$756.77. So what we have here, what we are faced with is we're faced with a situation where our cash in is $756, our known cash out is $363, and that ultimately leaves us with, what is it, $363.55? That leaves us with play money of $393.22, which means that we have $393.22 to pay a second lien to a investor, to a private money investor. That's the total maximum money that we could pay to them. But we also would like to fit our own profit in there if that's possible. We'd like to make some cash flow as well. We're getting in $756, we're spending $363 on the bank loan. We're left over with almost $400. In that, we need to pay our investor and pay ourselves.
What was the number? 400?
If possible. $393.22. Now, this gets into a lot of just deciding what works best for you. You've got to make a business decision at this point, because remember, we netted on our down payment over here. We took a $10,000 down payment. We netted $5,000 to $7,000 here, right up front. So we already made $5,000 to $7,000. I'm going to run a real quick scenario, okay? I'm going to say that we're going to take that entire cash flow to pay off the $20,000 loan to our investor, and that would mean that if we did that at 8%, it would get them paid off in 62 months, which is, a little bit over 5 years, 60 months being 5 years.
So you're saying take the entire down payment, but keep the down payment?
But keep the down payment.
So keep the down payment, but the entire cash flow that you're getting from your in minus your out, $393, and apply all that towards this guy.
That would be one way to do it. Yes, that's what I'm talking about doing right here.
How long would this scenario take?
That would be 63 months, so just over 5 years.
So this scenario, 5 years.
So it goes back to the questions that we were having last week of, well, how long do you offer your private money? This is how you determine how long you can offer your private money at. You're putting up an offering saying, this is what I can give. For your $20,000, I can pay you 8% for the next amortized for the next 5 years, 62 months or whatever, and that's going to get you paid back. That's one option. Another option would be, what did we net up front? We netted $5,000 to $7,000, right? So another option might be, if we just wanted to get this guy paid off as fast as humanly possible, our private money person, we could apply that entire down payment that we got to the loan as well, which would mean if we take it down to $15,000, let's say that we only netted $5,000 on our down payment. That would mean that we could give essentially our lender a $5,000 down payment, which our loan would then be $15,000. And at that point in time, we would be able to pay them off in just under 4 years. It would be 44 months if we did it that way.
4 years.
So 4 years. So,
but you would have, but the thing is though, as investors, this is where that patience game comes into play, because literally Travy and I were talking about this last night. He's like, why do people do rentals? Why do people do owner finance? Or why do people flip versus owner finance? You know, this situation, yeah, you're not making money for 4 years, but after 4 years.
But after 4 years, you're making almost $400 a month. So let me show you.
With zero risk, zero money into it whatsoever.
Right, totally.
100% profit.
And here's the cool thing about that is that, again, your cash out of pocket, you don't have cash out of pocket. You've got investor money here. You've got, you've sub-2'd on this. So your actual cash out of pocket is not very heavily leveraged.
But what you do have is raw work. Hashtag raw work. Because this shit doesn't just happen.
Right.
You got to go out there and do the work.
Right, you've got to do that work. But the cool thing here, and so I'm going to skip ahead and show you how much money you would make on this asset. Again, in interest of time, we don't want to go on forever. But we're going to be making $393 after, if we take this example where we're paying them off as fast as humanly possible.
Right.
Okay, that would mean that we're paying them off for 4 years. Well, we had 27 years left on this when we started. Mm-hmm. So in 4 years, we'll have 23 years left on this. So for the next 23 years, we're going to be making $393 a month. What's 23?
Did you say how many years this one was going to be at? 30?
This is at 30.
Okay.
So for the next, did I do that right?
24 years.
Times 12.
23 years, yeah.
Yeah, 276 times 393.22. So after you pay off your after you pay off your lender, you will make $108,528 on this asset while this loan is in place. But guess what? Once this underlying lien is paid off, once this underlying debt to the bank is paid off, now what's your cash flow for that remaining 3 years?
Mm-hmm. So after this guy's done,
you get a 23-year period, and that nets you $108,000.
So for 23 years, net 108. Mm-hmm. So now we're talking about boom. We're talking about, well, that's still there.
So once the underlying debt is paid off, we'll be making $756 a month for the next 3 years. So 756 77 times 36, you will make another $27,000, 243 over that next 3 years. So you have ultimately on this asset made a net income of, what is that, $135,000. $135,000 net income on this asset over time. Time value of money matters, right? That's going to knock off some, today money, just like we're talking about differently. Today money is less than overtime money, but still, even if you knock a third of that off, you're making a lot of money on this. $135,000 on this single asset that you put no cash out of pocket on, and you were able to give a full retail price offer for. That's the power of being able to use seller financing in your corner. Does that make sense to everybody? I'd like to see you guys chime in here and talk about that, because you have some cool stuff that's available to you by doing something like this. Now, Jacob is bringing up, I'm trying to get back to the beginning of this conversation, but ultimately he's saying, what about over the 4 years, hopefully appreciation is set in and you can rent raise and all that kind of stuff. Well, yeah, of course. That's what I was talking about. Your acquisition and your disposition are two different transactions, and you can choose to do whatever works for you. Mm-hmm. I'm taking one specific look at one disposition model, which is seller financing, because the problem with, hey, I'm going to rent this out, okay, I'm going to acquire it and then I'm going to rent it out, is we have said we're not going to accept any cash flow for the next 4 years. What kind of make-readies and what kind of repairs,
hail damage,
and
insurance screwing you over because they're not going to cover this, that,
right,
the other.
What kind of that kind of stuff can happen in that 4 years? Well, okay, let's say that your AC goes out. I like using that example because that happens frequently enough, right? That's $5,000, $6,000 depending on. If you've got a $400 possible cash flow that you could be getting in during that period of time, mm-hmm, well, now it's going to take you another couple of years before you start seeing your 0 point. So now you're at 6 years in, okay? Well, what happens in that 6 years if something else happens? That pushes you out to maybe 7 years, maybe 8 years, that kind of thing. By doing seller financing, you do not have responsibility to repair the house. You have responsibility to collect a check on the first of every month. And it's their responsibility to pay taxes, to pay insurance, to pay for repairs, and all of that kind of stuff. And by the way, short sneak peek into the future, because one of the big things I hear is, well, what if they stop paying? If they stop paying you, if this person stops paying you and you have to foreclose on them, the ultimate end of the story is you're going to make a ton more money. Without doing the numbers, I can tell you right now, if you had to foreclose on this person within the first 5 years, you would likely turn this 135 number into something more like 215. That's the power of owner financing. Is foreclosure sucks. We don't want to put people into a house that we think we're going to have to foreclose on. But ultimately, if we do, we make a lot more money on the deal.
But again, to emphasize, that's not what
That's
you
not
want.
what we're about. We do not want to foreclose, and we want to put people in that we think can pay for it.
Because you want to go to the next house and do it again. And the biggest takeaway is, how much of your own money does it take to make 135? If you can't see his tiny hands, that's a big
Call me
old
Trump.
zero.
$0 out of pocket. This is why we're able to buy at those higher percentages, is because we're not leveraging our own capital. Now, one thing, just like I pointed out last week, if you bring in a private lender to do this $20,000, that is your butt. You make sure that lender gets their money back.
So, is there any other points that you want to make on that
No,
real quick?
well, no.
Well, I want to make one quick point on this. So 135, $0 in. Yeah, it took 30 years, $135,000. But all you have to do is work your tail off and make the money, right?
Right.
So going back to the scenario, it was a $100,000 house, right?
And to that work your tail off, the cool thing about this, you work your tail off for a very finite amount of time. You work your tail off until you have it sold, and then you get to back off and not have to do things anymore.
So say you're a flipper or a wholesaler, but say you did buy that house at $50,000.
Yeah.
You did put the 20 into it, so now you're in it for 70, and then you sold it for the 100, but guess what? You still got to assume that 10%. So you make the 90, 70, 90, that's only 20 grand.
And how long did you hold that property while you were doing
Yeah,
it?
and it might be a 2-month, a 3-month flip, but
Which
again,
is insurance and taxes and utilities
Right.
and holding costs of your interest. So your 20 might actually be like 12. But we're just going to say 20.
we'll just say 20
Yeah.
because obviously 12 versus 135 is a no-brainer. But hopefully 20 versus 135 is equally as no-brainer.
Right, exactly.
Hope-
So good point. But I do just, again, want to emphasize, too many people don't look at utilities, interest, that kind of thing, when they took, again, I just scoff constantly. I know I've brought this up because I just get so jaded. I'm so tired of seeing it. The person take a picture of their check that they get from the title company at a closing, because that's not what you made. You didn't make that money. That money has to get subtracted out and subtracted out. And 9 times out of 10, I say 9 times, a lot of times, over 50% of the time, there's partners involved in the deal. So they're splitting out that money to all these. So ultimately, when you're looking at the profits that you're making, it becomes a no-brainer as to which you can, if you can beat the offer, come in at a higher offer and still turn a bunch of cash, it's awesome.
And again, if you're sitting here watching this going, oh, as a rental property, I own it after 30 years. Yes. But it's a different, everybody has their strategies. Real estate is vast. It's a huge game. What works for Grant may not work for Ryan. What works for Ryan may not work for Travion. What works for Travion may not work for Daniel. Find your niche, find your strategy, really, stay the student, become the student, whatever. Learn your trade and raw work.
Right. And this is one of those things, again, just to reiterate, I took one model off of, if you run your numbers and you can tell me why you would prefer to rent it out and that it actually makes sense for you, that's cool. If you're like, yeah, dude, I'm going to lose money for the next 5 years, but then I'm going to have a paid off property in 27 years, and this is going to work for my portfolio because I've already got all these other things. If you've got a reason behind it, cool, but run the numbers, know what you're doing, right? So let's jump into some questions here. If you've got questions, please put them on here. I'm going to try and start back from the beginning. So, thanks, Jacob. This is why Propelio kicks ass. They truly want investors to have a wealth of knowledge by bringing on guys like Grant, dropping great nuggets today. Thanks. I appreciate that. That's a good shout out. Chris, my Grant Teach Me Something shirt came in today. I'm financing them with a $15 down payment. How much is the total shirt, man? What are your terms?
I want a Grant Teach Me Something
I want a
shirt.
Grant Teach Me Something shirt. Okay, cool. So it says, Thomas says, do you not mention the actual number per repair, just the final offer? So I believe he's talking about like while we're walking through and we're saying like how much everything's going to be for. Kind of depends. So one of the negotiation things, if you're in San Antonio on Monday or you're in Houston on Tuesday, definitely you need to come to the Propelio meetups that are going down on there. I'm going to be talking about the head, heart, gut negotiations, and that being your foundation of negotiation. If you understand if somebody's a head, heart, or gut, it's going to really answer that question for you. If they're a head person, they need all the numbers. Yeah, I'm going to give them the total number, and then I'm going to say, because it's going to be you know, whatever, $5,000 for this, $3,000 for that, and start pointing out what the numbers are, give them that information. If they're a gut person presenting as a head, similarly, I'm going to give them all that information. It's just going to be presented in a little bit different of a way. If it's a heart person, we're not going to jump into that. It's not really, you know, they don't really care about those numbers, but we're ultimately giving them the total number. If they scoff at it, we might give them individualized numbers. And even at that point in time, oftentimes I've turned my book over to them and just been like, look, this is what I'm talking about doing here. These are my numbers.
Off topic of the video, but on topic of this question, do you use a seller net sheet?
I don't use a seller net sheet.
So what a seller net sheet is, it's a real big in the home investors game. So if you're a home investors person, you know exactly what this is. Seller net sheet is basically going through and explaining to them why they're getting 90%. Because a lot of people, they know what a realtor fee is, and they know they have an idea of what a title fee is, but they may not understand why, you know, 90% or that 90,000 really isn't 90,000. And what a seller net sheet does is break down. Okay, say you sell it for 100,000. Okay, minus the 6% for the buyer seller, minus the 2% for this, minus your holding costs, minus your utility costs, and then literally you break down all of your costs, well, not your costs, but their cost into getting that $100,000. So if they have to fix the foundation, my foundation, I could probably get it for $2,500. Your numbers are probably like a $4,000. It doesn't matter. And you literally could just pad your numbers and you give it to them. And in one ways, yeah, it's a guidebook on how they can do it themselves. But on the other hand, it's a scare tactic, because it's like, absolutely, you could do exactly what I'm doing and you could make all the money, but do you have $20,000 in your back pocket to actually do all those repairs? So that's what a seller net sheet is. Use it, don't use it. Again, Grant just says he doesn't use it.
Right. Yeah.
Uses sexy looks.
I do. I just tell him, I'm saying, hey, baby, how about you send me them houses of yours? Give him a little bit of a wink. So one question that Russian Jaime brings up, would you ever sell a partial of the note to pay off the investor? An investor could pay full value and get a high yield by buying a partial. It's possible. You could do that. That is another more advanced look into doing these kinds of things. Note sales are cool tools. I like note sales a lot.
I will say, I don't know if it was Monday or it might have been a week ago, Daniel and I did I say Daniel and I, let's be honest, it was Daniel. Daniel did a segment about how literally you could break down a note into two different, what am I trying to say? A first lien, second lien. You know, it didn't really apply to this, but we talked about how you could literally break down your payments or your notes into two, sell off one of them, retain the second, and then make it way more tons of money.
Yeah, you can pay off underlying debt by selling off part of your payments.
Right, but then retain the second.
And then retain the second.
Anyway, go watch that video.
Yeah, it's good. So
you have you don't know if it's good. You didn't watch it.
Well, I know that topic is good, and I know that Daniel knows what the hell he's talking about, so I'm assuming it's good. Cameron asking, do buyers agree to 9.5%? Absolutely. Buyers agree to even more sometimes. Then Mark bringing up, I acquired a property FHA mortgage in 2001. Still own it. Can I wrap it? It's worth 110. I owe 58. Absolutely, you can wrap that. You can wrap an FHA loan. You can wrap anything. The only thing I have had trouble figuring out, well, actually, you can really wrap anything. The only thing I've had trouble figuring out what to work with or how to work with is reverse mortgages. I don't really know a good way to work with reverse mortgages and owner financing. I haven't figured that one out yet. And I think, so I need to learn about this stuff. I'm just doing flips, but I want to get into rentals. Rentals can be really good for you. Just know what they are. They are not what everybody thinks they are, but they are great. Everybody thinks that they are these wonderful cash flowing machines that are just this brilliant work that make you rich. They're not. You get rich, then you get rentals. I guarantee you, you see people that are rich, they have rentals. They did not get rich with those rentals. They got rich somehow else, and then they started acquiring rentals to get there. So just know what you're getting into on that. But I appreciate you guys being in here. This has been a cool topic. I'm glad for the cooperation.
Yeah, and again, you know, keep the questions coming, regardless if this is like 6 years from now. I know Grant, myself, everybody here at Propelio, we actively monitor our Facebook channels, our Facebook videos. So if you pop questions in, if we don't know the answer, we will find somebody to answer it. I am always contacting Grant via text or message, be like, hey, I need you to comment on this because I don't know what the answer is.
Yeah.
And that's both for YouTube as well.
Yeah.
So I think we're pretty much wrapped up.
I think we're wrapped up here. Yeah. Thanks for being here.
Subtle plug to Propelio. If you need access to MLS comps, if you need off-market lead lists that are pulled daily.
They're good.
A lot of people with leads, data providers, I'm not going to speak to competitors, but there are some data providers out there that pull their data monthly. If you are in the real estate game and you are actively marketing, if you are behind the curve on marketing to leads, in a market like DFW or an active market like Houston or San Antonio or Chicago, anywhere, in pretty much any market, if you're a month behind on marketing, you're not ever going to buy a house. So the only time that might be applicable is like probates, because 3 to 6 months is when they usually sell, but that's regardless. But if you have a lead that's pulled daily from county records, that's way more valuable than a lead pulled monthly. So that's the rah-rah for the Propelio.
Yeah.
And then also we have our websites are still in beta. So if you are a subscriber to Propelio and you want to test out investor websites, the little chat bubble at the bottom right-hand screen of Propelio, go and say, hey, I want to test out these websites. We'll throw you up a beta account, and that should be coming live soon. So that's Propelio. Creative Cashflow, who you is. What that day?
CreativeCashFlow.com. I dive in full blown, like from start to finish. You've never done a deal before, to getting out there and getting some deals done. I focus on the seller financing side. I think that's your best rate of return for risk versus reward. And I mean, what you see me diving into here, we've got like full blown slideshows. It's really well done. We're walking you from step 1 to step 2 to step 3 to get you to where you want to be. So I encourage you to go check out CreativeCashFlow.com. There's also a 7-day free trial that you can sign up for just to see some videos, see what I'm talking about, but I know that you'll stick around.
Still got 30 seconds of plugs. If you are in the DFW area tonight, we are having another mastermind here in the studio. So if you want to learn about that, come to that. Hit me up on Messenger or Facebook or whatever. We'll let you know where we are. Next Monday, April 23rd, we were going to have the San Antonio REIA meetup. That is the second one. I expect anywhere from 200 to 400 people there. It's going to be a great event. The first one we did in February was
awesome.
It was a blast. It was amazing. I was really not awestruck, but I was like, oh, cool.
Yeah.
People came.
Yeah. And people loved it too.
And they loved it. And it's like, oh my God, this is the best event in San Antonio ever. I never said that, but other people are saying it, so I'll take it. So that might be the new shirt. Best event San Antonio. Anyway, because of that, we're like, you know what? Let's bring this to Houston. So on Tuesday, April 24th, we will be in Houston doing the same event pretty much. So again, 200 plus investors, got plenty of vendors and speakers to interact with. We have 9 different presentations at every event.
Wow.
Which is insane.
It's awesome.
Because usually you go to a meetup or whatever, you get one presenter and then one person selling you whatever they're trying to sell. And then obviously May 7th, DFW Real Estate Investor Meetup. Check it out. I'm pretty much all out of plugs.
Yeah, so I just want to address real quick something Cameron jumped in here, said, when does an interest rate go from good for business to predatory? Look at your state usury. Here in Texas, it's like 16.99. Dodd-Frank lays out some certain guidelines, but basically you can do anything you want until you hit the usury amount. Here at 16.99, so just kind of hang out under that.
And Jacob, shall I bring my Tito's? You can, but I just went to the liquor store, and Daniel definitely doesn't want to see that receipt.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for being here. Actually, so next Wednesday we'll probably be taking off, right? Because we will be coming back from Houston.
We can figure it out.
We'll figure it out. I know 2 weeks from then I will be on a cruise with my wife for our anniversary.
Is that in your country club?
That's yeah. We're gonna put my country club on a cruise. Yes.
That's an inside joke between Daniel, Grant, and myself.
I appreciate you guys being here. Like this, share this, interact with us, put questions, hit us up on Messenger, and we'll look to seeing you next time.
And if you have a direction you want to see us go for future episodes, drop that idea.
Yep.
Like we cherish this opportunity to connect and interact. What the hell was that?
I'm getting ready for my slow-mo.
Oh, slow-mo high five. Let us know what you want to see, and we'll get there.